Welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are unpacking something truly fascinating. When you read ancient texts, it's incredibly easy to just see them as this random collection of disconnected anecdotes. But if you do that with Matthew chapter 17, you are missing out on so much. What we actually have here is a perfectly constructed, highly intentional narrative. It's literally a masterclass in demonstrating Jesus' ultimate cosmic authority. So today, we're going to see exactly how this text weaves geography, history, and theology together to reveal a stunning and frankly unexpected picture of power.
Okay, let's dive right in. When we hear the phrase cosmic authority, what comes to mind? Usually we picture domination, conquering armies, maybe untouchable privilege, right? But Matthew 17 introduces a profound paradox. The central question we're exploring today is what true, supreme power actually looks like in this specific framework. And the shocking answer that this entire narrative builds toward? It's that supreme cosmic power is ultimately and inextricably expressed through humble suffering. To really grasp how the author gets us there, we have to look at the geographical journey he takes us on.
We're going to trace what you might call an arc of descent. Step 1, the absolute glory of Mount Hermon. Step 2, we drop down into intense demonic conflict in the valley. Step 3, the sobering passion prediction in Galilee. And finally, Step 4, dealing with something as mundane as the temple tax in Capernaum. This physical descent beautifully grounds these massive, cosmic theological concepts in real dirt, real places, and real history.
Let's start with Part 1, the Mountain of Glory, looking at Matthew 17, verses 1 through 13. So, geographically, there's a fascinating debate here. Traditionally, folks have associated the Mount of Transfiguration with Mount Tabor, but Tabor is lower in elevation and back then it was heavily populated. The narrative geography actually points us way north to Mount Hermon, which is an isolated peak rising over 9,000 feet. Why does that matter? Well, in Second Temple Jewish tradition, Mount Hermon was the very territory associated with the Watchers' Rebellion and Netherworld Authority. It's basically enemy territory. So by stepping onto this specific peak, Jesus is leading his inner circle right into the enemy's backyard. The Transfiguration here functions as a very intentional act of cosmic reclamation. He is proving, without a doubt, that he possesses supreme authority over the spiritual powers of the age.
The author also leaves us these brilliant little historical breadcrumbs. The text specifically notes that this event happened after 6 days. Now that isn't just random calendar tracking. It's an intentional callback to Exodus 24, where the glory of Yahweh covered Mount Sinai for exactly 6 days before God called out to Moses. So we've got some intense Sinai typology happening here, but notice the massive contrast. Moses' face shone with a fading radiance. He was just reflecting God's glory like a mirror. But on Hermon, Jesus' face shines like the sun with uncreated, intrinsic divine light. He isn't just reflecting the light, guys, he is the source of it.
And consider who actually shows up to this meeting. We've got Moses, representing the Torah, the law, who died on Mount Nebo. And we have Elijah, representing the prophets, who is translated directly to heaven. Both of these heavyweights had previously met Yahweh at Mount Sinai. And now, here they are, appearing in physical form to converse with the incarnate Word. What this proves is absolutely incredible. It shows us that the Torah and the prophets do not stand in opposition to Jesus. He isn't out to abolish the law. He's the divine lawgiver fulfilling the whole thing. They are literally bearing witness to the King Messiah as he prepares to head toward Jerusalem.
Of course, Peter completely misunderstands the gravity of this moment. He immediately proposes building 3 tabernacles, which effectively places Jesus right on the exact same level as Moses and Elijah. He's flattening the Messiah's unique identity down to the level of ancient prophets. But before he can even get the words out, a bright cloud, the Shekinah presence of God, overshadows them. And booming out of that cloud comes the Bat Kol, the audible voice of God, completely interrupting Peter's attempt to box Jesus in.
The voice from the cloud declares, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And this brilliantly illustrates how a single divine acclamation can tie together 3 massive threads of Old Testament hope. Think about it. It integrates Psalm 2, identifying Jesus as the enthroned Davidic king. It weaves in Isaiah 42, pointing straight to the suffering servant, and it finishes with Deuteronomy 18, crowning him as the ultimate prophet like Moses, whose authority supersedes all prior revelation. In just one sentence, the entire redemptive framework clicks into place like a giant puzzle.
Let's keep moving down the mountain. Section 2, Confronting Demonic Strongholds. Matthew 17, 14 through 21.
We plunge from that 9,000-foot peak of glory directly into the valley of human misery. At the bottom,
They are immediately met by a desperate father begging for mercy for his son. The boy is described as seleniazamones, literally meaning moonstruck or epileptic, suffering from these terrifying seizures. Now, I want to clarify something important. The ancient text actually recognizes a medical difference between natural organic disease and direct demonic influence. We see them listed side by side earlier in Matthew. But in this specific instance, the severe physical trauma of the boy's epilepsy is being directly caused or at least exploited by an unclean demonic spirit.
The father tells Jesus that the 9 disciples who stayed behind at the bottom of the mountain couldn't cure the boy. Later on, behind closed doors, they ask Jesus, why couldn't we do it? Jesus gives them a very blunt diagnosis, oligopistia, meaning little faith. So the crucial point here is that the disciples didn't lack the delegated authority. Jesus had explicitly given them that power earlier in the story. They failed because they tried to perform the exorcism as if they were operating on their own inherent status. They relied on themselves rather than on the authority of the Messiah through prayer. Essentially, they forgot who was actually in the business of moving mountains.
Moving to Section 3, the Suffering Servant, Matthew 17, 22-23.
As they gather in Galilee, the soaring heights of Mount Hermon come crashing into sobering reality. Jesus issues his second explicit passion prediction, clearly stating he will be delivered, killed, and raised on the 3rd day. The text notes that this deeply grieved the disciples. I mean, talk about severe cognitive dissonance, right? This perfectly highlights their immense struggle to reconcile the glorious, radiant king they just saw shining like the sun on the mountain with a crucified, suffering Messiah. How on earth can the ultimate cosmic authorities submit to being killed by mere men? It's a massive tension that just wouldn't be resolved for them until the resurrection.
And finally, Section 4, Royal Freedom and Fulfillment, verses 24-27.
We follow the descent all the way down into Capernaum, where this grand cosmic narrative meets the remarkably mundane issue of human taxation. The tax collectors walk up to Peter and ask if his teacher pays the didrachma. This was the annual half-shekel temple tax required of Jewish males over 20. It's a practice anchored way back in Exodus and Nehemiah, used to support the daily public sacrifices and temple upkeep. It's also worth noting that in the 1st century, this was a real hot-button issue. Groups like the Qumran community heavily debated it, arguing it should only be a one-time payment for life, not annual. So this isn't just small talk, it's a loaded question.
Before Peter can even bring the issue to Jesus, Jesus initiates this fascinating logical argument. He asks Peter, hey, do earthly kings collect taxes from their own sons or from strangers? Peter rightly answers, from strangers, obviously. And then Jesus drops the Christological core of this whole narrative. Therefore, the sons are free. Jesus is establishing his unique identity here. Think about it. The Jerusalem temple is the house of Yahweh, his heavenly Father. Just as an earthly king doesn't tax his own kids to fund the royal palace, Jesus, as the unique divine Son, is entirely free from paying tribute to maintain his Father's house.
But then, Jesus does something completely unexpected. Even though he's exempt, he tells Peter to go catch a fish so they don't cause a stumbling block. And Peter goes down to the water, and in the mouth of the very first fish he catches, he finds exactly a 4-drachma coin, a Tyrian shekel. Now, what's so brilliant about this specific number, 4 drachmas, is that it perfectly covers the half-shekel tax for exactly 2 people, Jesus and Peter, down to the very penny.
This miracle is just a brilliant synthesis of everything we've talked about. Jesus pays the tax, but absolutely not out of legal obligation. As the Lord of the temple, he inherently owes nothing. He does it out of profound pastoral wisdom. By using a creation-commanding miracle to pay a human tax, he demonstrates sovereign mastery over the natural world, while simultaneously modeling incredible royal humility. He voluntarily forfeits his royal rights just to protect the weak, preserve peace, and maintain an unhindered witness for the kingdom.
When we pull back and look at this entire explainer, the sheer genius of this theology becomes so clear. We see physical, tangible, historical realities, real mountains, real taxes, terrible illnesses, and ancient prophets, all finding their ultimate realization in Jesus. This whole geographical descent from Mount Hermon perfectly mirrors the theological reality Matthew wants us to grasp. Ultimate cosmic authority is inextricably bound to the cruciform suffering servant. The absolute king of creation is the very one who steps down into the muddy valley of our suffering and voluntarily surrenders his rights for us.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. We spend so much of our time chasing influence, status, and control in our own lives, right? operating on our own authority, acting a whole lot like those disciples down in the valley. But if the ultimate cosmic authority, the one who shines with uncreated light and literally commands the physical elements, intentionally chose the path of humility, service, and the cross, well, how should that completely upend everything we expect from leadership, power, and our own daily lives? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.